Hi, my name is Andrea Durney. I'll be presenting my unit plan on tribal management, which is the class I'll be teaching this fall over video conference to the villages of Hoosley and Allakaket. The established goals for the net standard: students will apply existing knowledge to generate new ideas, products, and processes. Students will understand the history of federal Indian law for Alaska tribes and also some of the main events in history that affected why tribal governments exist and why they are enrolled into a tribal government and serve as a tribal member. We'll also be covering some of the main events in history that affect tribal courts, and students will be able to know their tribe and local government structures, activities, functions of their tribe and non-tribal councils, and also the purpose of the tribal council. For the transfer, students will be able to participate meaningfully in their tribal governments, and this is a board-driven class that the board would like for the students in our villages to know and understand their rights, roles, responsibilities as tribal members in their community. And not only that, their obligation as tribal members to their community as they serve as tribal leaders after high school. For the main understanding, students will understand the historical and cultural aspects of the present form of tribal government, the basic elements of federal Indian law from the historical perspective and how it applies to tribes in Alaska today, and the purpose, function, and governance of the tribal council, non-tribal council, and tribal courts. For the extension questions, again, getting the students to really think about what are their obligations, their responsibilities as tribal members? What are their rights? What can they do as tribal leaders in their communities? How does the knowledge of the tribal government benefit them and their community? How can they make sure their rights are protected? And how can they encourage responsibility in their tribe? And these are really important questions to think about, especially now that Tana Chief Conference is pushing towards tribes having jurisdiction over cases involved crimes in their community, and how the tribals can actually have their judges and courts in determining what the punishment is going to be for tribal members who commit those crimes. Acquisitions: students will know the tribal government and tribal vocabulary. So, for example, the IRA, which stands for Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, the significant historical events and documents related to tribal organizations. They'll also be able to know who their current leaders are in their community and in their government, and the events in tribal government. Students will be skilled at reading historical documents, comparing documents and events, and summarizing documents to build understanding. Stage 2, evidence, evaluative criteria. Students will demonstrate knowledge of the different types of tribal constitutions and their cultural significance, again being able to apply them back into their own life and how it affects themselves and their communities. Identify the types of constitution used in local tribal organization using excerpts from the document. We will be going out and getting the tribal constitutions from each of their villages, as each village has different constitutions apply specifically to their village, so none are exactly the same. And as we know in policy, they tend to change over time depending on who's in office. For performance tasks, students will give excerpts from their local tribal constitutions, determine the type of constitution they're dealing with. Is it IRA or is it traditional? Given excerpts from 3 to 5 different tribal constitutions and categorize each document under IRA or non-IRA. They'll be able to further categorize aspects of each document as being culturally appropriate, culturally relevant, is it 21st century ready, and then again, given their perspective, whether they agree or do they disagree with each of the constitutions. Does it apply to their life? Is it culturally appropriate? Some of the main issues that we're still covering today for Native people for 30 years ago, if you go back and read those articles, are: 1, fishing rights, subsistence rights, development of natural resource, and still the lands issue. They'll be able to defend the statement, tribal organizations are better off with traditional constitutions, and use specific data and expertise from today's tribal leaders. So we'll also be having and hearing from guest speakers in the classroom. For the self-assessment, students can give examples of how constitution affects today. can share with a partner at least one effect of the IRA and write one-page paper of the cultural relevance. Again, back to the fishing or hunting subsistence. Do they agree or disagree, and how does it affect their living situation? If they don't have enough meat for the winter, do they agree with how their regulations are stated, and the regulations that are placed on Native people regarding fishing and hunting? They can define the main terms. For the teacher rubric, I'll be using a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. 10 being that the students can apply. They can list the traits. They can give 2 or 3 examples of how IRA affects their lives today. Demonstrate 4 or more relevant examples of tribal constitutions and how it applies to their life, and their technology used is well executed. So in the middle of the spectrum of 5, so they can get anywhere between 5 and a 10, so they can get a 6, 7, or 8, depending on what they have. Is they can understand the distinguishing traits of the tribal constitution. They can give at least one example of how IRA affects their lives, and there may be evidence of some of the misunderstandings of key ideas. They can demonstrate 2 to 3 relevant examples, and their technology use is appropriate. 1 on the lower end, meaning they need some guidance, and the student wouldn't be able to list any distinguishing traits of tribal constitutions, or their work shows limited understanding of the ideas and does not give examples of the cultural relevance, and they demonstrate 1 or less relevant examples of tribal constitution, and also their technology use is appropriate, but content is missing information. Summary of key learning in events and instruction, stage 3. Students will share written and oral stories from past and current tribal leaders that the benefits of having IRA and traditional constitution. We'll be having guest speakers coming into the class, and if they can't come into the class, we'll be using Skype, so that they can participate and they'll hear of the things that are going on in their communities regarding tribal Indian law. I also plan on having at least one of the sessions on a Wednesday where the students can chime into one of the meetings from there at the school and between the local tribes. Also, from hearing from over Skype from the professor at the Interior Relations campus, Kevin, and also Sue Hollingsworth from Tana Chiefs Conference. Students will brainstorm with the class. Some of the brainstormings we'll be doing are thinking maps, outlines, word splashes, lists of categories, etc., and the protections that they would want for their children if they were in charge of establishing a working constitution for their tribe. So, for example, one of the issues that is going on is the Indian Child Welfare Act. The students will give examples of constitutions. They will highlight items that are still relevant in today's society, such as the fishing and hunting rights, how it affects them. We'll be watching the videos for Alaska tribes and going over before the visitors coming in and coming up with questions that they can ask them. So after the meeting, the students will be putting together a first draft of their constitution. They'll be using the rubric to ensure they have all the characteristics, and then they'll also be presenting it to the class through the use of PowerPoint. So again, I would just like to say thank you to everybody in the class and learning and sharing your ideas, and also to Lee. I'm really excited about this fall and kind of nervous at the same time because our district is kind of moving towards more distance delivery of classes due to our low enrollment of students, and also to offer more content, core, and elective classes to our students. So this will be really interesting. I'd like to thank you for a wonderful semester and wish you the best of luck in this coming school year. Thanks, and have a great summer.